So you're the one who's going to be uh, countering all these rave reviews of Raya?
Well, maybe.
Hmm.
Are you going to help me counter the rave reviews of Raya, or are we going to be countering each other on this particular show?
We might be countering each other. I really enjoyed the movie. It does fit a lot of it does check a lot of Disney boxes.
It checks all the Disney boxes, like all of them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I was just in a mood where I really appreciated visually and artistically what's going on here. And maybe not so much. The movie is very much a typical hero's journey type thing. Fine. I mean, honestly, we don't get a lot of, let's say, like, and I know you might disagree with what I'm about to call this, but original content. And but only by that, what I mean is this isn't an established IP. This isn't a sequel. It's not a prequel. It's not a reboot. So it's got that going for it. And I do appreciate the fact that it's a feature, an animated feature that's set in a kind of magical fantasy world that seems yes, there's some influences from other places, sure, story-wise maybe, but I feel like the world building is really cool. And a lot of the myths established in the movie is, although somewhat confusing at times, it's still, very an absorbing and entertaining asset to the film, I think. Yeah. So, but yes, it does check Disney boxes.
Well, it also checks. It checks a lot of. I mean, this movie kind of takes from everywhere. And to your point about it being original in terms of not being an existing IP or a sequel, I'll grant you that, but it might as well be, because the entire establishment of this world, it's like an Asian Middle Earth. I mean, you've got this flashback story about, these embattled powerful forces, and there's a glowing object that is going to bring,
Bring the
justice to land or curse the land. And there's, 5 guardians of it, and they're wiped out, and then darkness is consuming everything. We get a quest for eventually 5 separate shards of this dragon heart, and each shard has its own, don't you know this, each gem has a sort of a magical attribute to it, and if you combine them all into, say, I don't know, maybe like a gauntlet, you could really change things. I mean, this is Lord of the Rings, it's Guardians of the Galaxy,
it's MCU, it's Star
MCU.
Wars,
right? And the thing is, I get getting swept up in the visuals, but there was nothing in the visuals that really wowed me. I look at a movie like Moana, I look at a movie like Tangled, where I'm going to places that I haven't really seen before, in animation styles that are, offer a lot to people who are kind of like cynical animation watchers. I didn't see anything here except for maybe that kind of cool fragmented sword that Raya's dad and eventually
cool
she
weapon.
uses. It is, but then it's cool to see in action. But I'm also like, didn't I see this in a video game somewhere? And that's another kind of problem, is this very much is a video game movie, down to these title cards. I was telling my wife last night, we were both watching this, trying to figure out how we felt about it, and
achievement unlocked.
It very much so, because you start off with the map of Middle Earth. Sorry, it's not Middle Earth, which is
Kamandra.
Kamandra, yeah, the Kamandra conundrum.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes. Well, I'm nothing if not predictable. But so Earth at one point, this is an alternate reality. Earth at one point, the map of it, at least the flat version. So maybe this is a flat Earth. I don't know if this is like the wraparound or what. Nothing in this movie makes a lick of sense. So let's just go with it. I never did see
a globe, but maybe you're right.
Oh, there you go. It looks like a dragon. And due to these like black and purple smoky lightning squibbly doos,
we'll call them purple COVID.
Yes, the COVID molecules. Oh, wait, no, we should step away from that because this is largely a Chinese allegory. I don't want to get into trouble. But let's just say that these powerful forces align. They take out the peaceful race of dragons that were living in harmony with human beings, 500 or 600 years ago, turn them all into stone. There is one last dragon who, and I'm going to need your help because I've forgotten a lot of the details. This thing is, yes, Sisu, but I'm talking about like what happened to her. Her essence got trapped in this last gem that was sort of the culmination of all of their powers. And then all of the lands of this dragon map got separated into 5 different realms representing heart, fang, spine, talon, and that might be it.
Something else.
Yeah. And all the cultures of the earth hate each other. They're at war. They all blame each other for what happened. And this struggle has been going on for hundreds of years. The heart faction is the guardian of this magical orb. Raya is tasked by her father to be the next in line to guard this, sacred object so that the warring factions don't get their hands on it. The warring factions,
she's essentially a princess.
She's a princess. I mean, yeah, but it's more in the modern kind of Disney context, which I do appreciate. The princesses, they're warrior princesses. We saw this with, sort of, well, Mulan wasn't exactly a warrior princess, but
you
kind
could
of
say
the same
Moana.
thing. Yeah. Moana too. Yeah, really spunky fighting spirit. Great stuff. She is betrayed by the daughter of one of the other leaders of the other tribes at this giant gathering where they're all supposed to make world peace. Chaos ensues when the orb, it shatters and unleashes the darkness that starts turning everything into stone.
Yeah, unleashes the virus, the plague.
Yes.
I think it's called Droon.
Droon, yes. So cut to 6 years later, after Raya's father has been turned into stone, she's riding around the different lands on her giant pseudo-mechanized armadillo sidekick.
Furbug, cross between a hedgehog and a pillbug, roly-poly.
Yeah, is this a real thing that's supposed to exist, or is this a mythical creature? Because I was thoroughly confused.
Nah, it's an amalgam of cute little furry creatures,
there's a few of those in this movie, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about any of this. Anyhow,
it doesn't seem like you felt much of anything about this.
I didn't, and that's the thing is the lore and the stuff that's going on in this movie, it's very dense. It's not deep, it's just dense because there's a lot going on. But the basic plot is Raya ends up going to each of the 5 realms and sort of collecting people on her way in this quest to get all of the stones back together.
Unintentionally collecting them, yes.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I mean, if you know the setup of this movie, you know exactly what's going to happen almost every step of the way, except for some of the boneheaded narrative missteps that I feel like were just inserted so that the story could go on.
Yeah. I mean, as far as collecting people on the way, I mean, it's very much Wizard of Oz,
Guardians of the Galaxy for sure.
Yeah, A New Hope, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey type thing. I would say what really made it interesting for me is the conversations that Raya had with Sisu about now Sisu. The more she acquires these different kind of shards of this crystal, the more she is kind of augmented or accented her being and her powers. At one point, I think it's the second crystal she kind of acclimates or consumes. She turns into a human form of herself, and that's totally new for her. She's used to being a dragon, which is an interesting element right there. I did like the fact that you're seeing humanity from this perspective, from this dragon's perspective, and she doesn't quite understand why humans deceive each other, why they can't trust each other, and I mean, it is an overall kind of gradually growing theme in the movie is, not necessarily can't we all just get along? But it's like, why can't we trust each other? What's it going to take to trust each other? um, you know, what are we going to do about the loss that we've experienced in order to go forward? And it's interesting, on a, it's not vague, it's not too heavy-handed, I don't think, but it's enough that would kind of elicit interesting conversations, let's say amongst the family, okay, about trust and not assuming everybody's going to be the same way. One of the we get that really early on in the kind of a flashback or the early scenes from Araya's past, where she's talking to her father. Her father once is inviting all these previously kind of combative tribes from across the nations, and he's telling Raya that he's invited them over, and she's like, all right, should we prepare for battle? What are we going to use? Because she thinks that their nation is going to fight the other nations. And he's like, no, we're having them over for dinner to have a fellowship, and consume food together. She's like, what? And, I mean, right there, she's just kind of learning that, her father realizes that, we need to stop fighting with each other and have a common goal of unity and peace. And the only way to do that is for somebody to start. And Kamandra is this utopia idea where all the nations are united and living in harmony. Okay, that sounds kind of cheesy and trite maybe, but it's an idealistic message that I think is good to put out there.
It's an idealistic message that is sidelined for pretty much the entire runtime. One of the things I didn't like about the movie is, Sisu is, she is the optimist. She's the dragon who's been sort of hanging out in the nether realm for centuries. Uh,
Mhm.
so when she was snapped into it or whatever, she, it was during this big conflict and everything, but it was still at the end of this time when dragons lived among people and it was a peaceful, kind of a harmonious relationship. She's come out into a world that, where everybody basically hates each other. Um, and that's kind of an interesting place to put your hero, but she's not really the hero of the piece. She's a side hero, kind of a mascot, symbol of importance for sure. But we're supposed to care about Raya, I think, as she's she's the
Huh?
title character, right? But she is so
Yeah.
miserable throughout this entire movie. She loses that optimism early on, and she continues it throughout the entire film until the very end, when everything kind of goes, when peace is achieved. But up until
Mhm.
that point, she's talking about, because I think her father was betrayed and then turned into stone. Yeah, that leads to some bitterness. But
Sure.
as she's wandering these different lands and meeting these different people, she's cynical, she's catty, she makes all these remarks about, like, this is why I never want to have kids and the world kind of sucks and all these people are, we're all doomed. I'm like, that's fine if you're going to use that as like a 15-minute little arc or maybe a movie long arc for a side character. But as a protagonist, I'm like, I'm kind of starting to feel you here. I just want this all to end too.
I mean, did you want her to break out into a chippy song during a dystopian landscape, or I don't know. I mean,
No, I'm saying it's one thing to have a movie where all hope is lost and you're trying to, save everybody. And that's what you get in like Star Wars A New Hope. Yeah, the
mhm.
Empire has taken over everything, but Luke Skywalker isn't sitting there on Tatooine going, what's the point? Everybody sucks and I gotta go. Great, I gotta go on this quest. Why am I doing this? No one's gonna like each
Well,
other at the end anyway.
he was whining about he just wanted to go to Tashi Station, but
Sure. But I'm
he
saying,
started out a whiner. Okay.
okay, but there's a difference between being a whiner and being dour. I mean,
Yeah.
there is not, I don't think Raya is an aspirational character, one to look up to. I mean, if you look at, look at Moana, for example, she
Mhm.
was an adventurous, optimistic character in a world where everything was going wrong around her. And that's a choice that the filmmakers make. They
Mhm.
can do this, but the attitude, the vibe I got from this is very much something that I've seen in the wider culture, with the division and animosity that's been going on for like the last, let's say, at least 5 years about everything sucks. But there's a way to approach that which is, yes, everything sucks. How can we work to make it better? Versus everything sucks because I can't get off Twitter. And this is very much a please get off Twitter and write a better movie.
I like that. Don't agree with it, but I like it. Yeah, I mean, I saw her as a resilient, strong character who's kind of broken, and devastated by her loss and maybe feels a little survivor guilt. Okay, and, of course, what ticked me off right away is you just knew that the dad was going to die.
Can we
And
have a
it's
Disney movie?
I mean,
Can we
come
have a
on.
Disney movie where the parents survive? I mean, the closest we've come is Onward, and even that,
But
the
that was
dad's dead, but he
Pixar.
kind of comes back. Disney, Pixar, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all the same thing. Just like you can't separate Marvel from Disney anymore. It's all the same thing.
I just feel like you're gonna get parents who don't die, and you'll find those more so in Pixar than you will in a Disney animation movie, like a feature. Because like I look at the parents from Inside Out were so great, very supportive, trying to figure out things on their own, but also just kind of giving the teenagers some space and everything, and just like, we're here for you. I don't know what to do. I like that. And maybe other Pixar movies too, like Onward had some great single parent, but of course the whole thing revolves around the dead father. But but here it's like it's always going to be in traditional Disney fashion. It's within the first like 10-15 minutes, a parent gets off, and of course, and even saving Raya, just like and so I'm like, all right, I guess we're gonna go there. So yeah, and there's that's just one of many boxes. I mean, the whole princess warrior type stuff, being betrayed by somebody, putting your trust into somebody yet being betrayed, and then licking your wounds from that. That's what happened to her father. It's what happened to her. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I guess going back to like artistically and visually, I am still, when it comes to animation, I'm still like thoroughly impressed with what they could do with fully realizing a world, fully realizing even just atmosphere within the world, the different cities and towns and places that they come up with that are distinctive. I thought that was really creative, and like even the way they animate water here is really cool. Sure, you could say, yeah, we've seen that done before. You could look at How to Train Your Dragon and all this stuff, and okay, yeah, but I'm still no less wowed by what they can do. And it's funny how like Daniel Day Kim plays her dad, and they made her dad look so much like Daniel Day Kim. It's one of those where it feels like they basically conceptually design certain characters to look just like the actor, especially like when Sisu, who's voiced, as you mentioned, by Aquafina, when she becomes human, I mean, it looks just like Aquafina. That stuff could be a little inside baseball for some people who like maybe already know who the voices are and stuff, but it might not matter to most people. But I caught on to those things, and I thought it was, I mean, I thought it didn't detract from anything. It's not like Sean Connery's voice coming out of the dragon from Dragonheart.
Yeah, I mean this visually, yeah, it's kind of cool that they modeled some of the characters after the actors. But I mean, I guess I would just invite you to imagine a time, maybe this time will never come because you've got the heart of a child, and that's beautiful. But imagine a time when you are over the visuals, like 20 years from now, you go back and watch this and it's just another movie. How much of that visual enjoyment allowed you to look past, like, if this was just another live action, like sci-fi channel movie with a mediocre CGI dragon, would you be like, yeah, this is still pretty good? Or I've seen this movie 100 times.
I'll let you know when I get there. I don't know. I mean,
It's an impossible question. I know.
I know. I still felt while watching this movie. I mean, I did get choked up and teary-eyed. I mean, the whole idea of basically all these people that this Drune virus, this plague turned into stone, are eventually, all that effect is eventually reversed, and there's a reunion with formerly what we would assume to be deceased people or or altered beings, supposedly lost forever.
It's almost like a blip, is what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. Or Sodom and Gomorrah turning into stone or salt or something. But I did get a little choked up with the idea of the fact that here we're seeing loved ones being reunited with characters they thought lost or gone forever. That's a heartfelt thing.
I understand that, and I think that's what they were going for, and obviously it worked to some degree.
For me,
but I'm thinking about the story, something that the Avengers movies did with the snap, where everyone essentially turns to dust. Here they turn to stone, but it still looks very snappish the way that it happens. Where it's almost like the reverse snap, where they're turning in, the dust is transforming them instead of them transforming into it. But when they came back. And this is only one movie. They had to handle this over the course of a couple of films. They talk about the after effects of coming back from that experience and having to be reintegrated into society. Here, there's no sense of the passage of time once people come back. So if you were taken out and turned into stone by these, what do you call them? Drunes.
Yeah.
When that happened, chances are you were one of these 5 factions who was at war with the other 5 factions. So when you come back into the world, you're probably going to have a lot of questions. We don't know if they were, again, hanging out in a spirit realm, watching everything that was happening, or if they're literally just frozen and then unpaused. So at the very end of the film, when the world is unsnapped, blipped, whatever, they all converge on the Heart Nation and everyone's kumbaya. That makes absolutely no sense unless there's someone to say, wait, I know that when you were turned to stone, you hated all these people, but now everything's great again. Just trust us. We're all going to get back together.
Well, I mean, there was a representative from each land or nation that went back after, let's say, the blip. And because the fact that most of those people that were once stone are now returned to human form, obviously they know that something happened, something worked, and their whole land had changed, like visibly, geographically had changed. So I think that it's not. I think the kumbaya moment is warranted just because they realize that something happened, and these people who, the select few people that returned to their village was part of Raya's, let's say, team. They were changed. They were involved in making this world, returning it back to this commandra. So, I think that, sure, maybe that's happening off camera, but there is this whole kind of like a montage at the end of the movie where we see each member of Raya's team return to their respective land. And it's almost like a yub moment from the end of Return of the Jedi, where we see each galaxy, each planet and city, like kind of rejoicing in the victory.
Oh, I don't have any problem with the people in her gang kind of returning to their homelands and being reunited. They would be happy to see their families. Their families would be happy to see them. I'm talking about, and I'm applying adult reasoning to what is essentially fairy tale logic, because let's assume that however many hundreds or thousands of people over the course of these 6 years had been turned to stone, as we saw with, I don't know, was it Fang, the one where there was the one guy, the Drax the Destroyer character, Tong, where he was the last surviving member of his village.
The spine,
the spine. Okay. So what I'm saying is, there were some probably adults who were turned to stone who had spent their entire lives in essentially a state of war with the other nations
Hmm.
of the planet, you don't just go through a traumatic event of being at war, being frozen and being unfrozen and accepting, hey, we're all getting along now. You can't just reprogram yourself, much less entire nations of people. And at the very end, when people converge, I
Sure.
again, there's probably another movie or maybe even a Disney Plus TV show talking about the politics of this land. But yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, no, this is lazy. There's a better way to handle this. At least maybe indicate that things aren't. If it just weren't so fairy tale storybook happy at the end, I think I might have believed it a bit more.
I mean, that's what you kind of expect in a fantasy movie like this, for it to all kind of fall into place. I wasn't too surprised by that. What you're probably asking for is some kind of like outtake scenes where, like, for example, in the Spine Nation, where Tong is explaining to all these, unfrozen, unstoned, we'll say, um, uh, warriors, barbarians, and Tong is explaining, no, 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 this is what happened. You got to understand me. This girl from Heart, she brought us all together, and we helped her out. I helped her out, and it was all for us, for you, for the whole, Comundra. Um, so maybe that wasn't there. I just figured, I filled in the blanks. You know, Maybe that's not enough for you or others. I don't know.
Um, I want to talk about the dialogue in
Mm,
this movie.
hmm.
Very talented voice actors,
Yeah.
but I almost wanted to turn the sound off and just watch this movie with subtitles. Um,
Mm,
might not have helped, but there's the manner of speaking of pretty much all the characters in this movie was so gratingly modern that I couldn't stand it.
mm,
When you've got, I don't know when this is supposed to take place. It's 500 years after this, dragon disappearance thing, and
mm,
then there's 6 years after that, but it still looks, pretty ancient, or at least a long time ago kind of a situation. You don't have,
hmm.
this isn't the modern Earth version of what this would have, looked like. It's very much a Middle Earth kind of a setting.
Right.
And, but we've got characters who are talking very quippy and sarcastically and talking about nerding out on stuff. I'm like, again, this all sounds like it was written, in 280 character bursts over Twitter.
I mean, maybe it's because there were too many people involved in the story. I know that I was looking at the credits afterwards, and it looks like there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least 9, maybe 8 people credited to the story and screenplay. Um, that's never a good thing, I
Well,
think.
were those the screenwriters of the other movies this one ripped off?
Could be.
Hmm.
And there's also like 4 directors, which isn't unheard of in an animated movie. But I feel like when you have, maybe too many eyes and ears and brains on a film, there, it's hard to focus in on certain specifics. Like, yeah, it would have been cool to have some type of a, like, something akin to like Asgardian speak or Amazonian speak or whatever.
I mean, I don't even need that necessarily. I'm talking about, like, if you look at a movie like Aladdin, the genie Robin
Mhm.
Williams character stood out because he was kind of an out of time, out of place, wacky character who spoke with his own cadence.
Pop culture, yeah, yeah.
Right. Aladdin and Jafar and, Jasmine, they just talked like
Mm.
what you might describe to be regular people. The characters in this movie, aside from Daniel Day Kim, and maybe the mother of, was it Namari?
Verani. Let
Yeah.
me look here.
Um,
Yeah.
they were pretty much two of the only real adults in the film. in
Mhm.
terms of like actual presence and also
Verano.
manner of
Yeah.
and manner of speaking. Everybody else was this very casual 21st century delivery, and I just found it very jarring.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably playing to the target audience of, young teens, young female teens, probably. Um, y- yeah, I mean, especially the collected team that Raya unintentionally gathers. It's kind of all over the place as far as age and size and shapes. I mean, you have this kind of pickpocket gymnastic crazy toddler. Okay.
With
And
three, what animals were those that she was hanging out with? Are those more mystical creatures? Because I
I
couldn't
think they're
quite.
mystical creatures because they
Okay.
were almost like lemur, raccoon type stuff. Um, you know, Sisu, the dragon itself, is kind of almost like a ferret, which reminded me a little bit of my own dog, but also uh, the creature from Neverending Story. I forget the name of the
Oh,
dragon.
Falcor. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought of
Falcor. Yeah,
Falcor too. Yeah.
yeah, Falcor, which I didn't mind.
No.
And yeah, and there's also this. They get a ride. I forget from what nation. From this kid who has kind of like a boat diner type thing, and he's a young boy. I didn't mind the fact that most of their team was compiled of young kids. Let's say left after the blip. Um, and then of course you get this big hulking barbarian Tong, voiced by Benedict Wong. Um, uh, I don't know. I mean, I guess it each time a new character was, except for maybe Tong, but especially the young characters like the boy Baun, I think was his name, or Boone, and the young the pickpocket toddler. Each time they were introduced, I was like, okay, I guess I got to get on board with this. Just accept it and wrap my brain around it. But okay, here we go. It was at least something different, and it wasn't like typical. Okay, this guy is a wizard, or this guy is, whatever. It's a little bit different, but I could tell how it was very much placating to a certain target audience. Like there's like raspberries blown. There's jokes about farts. They run into this kind of video game type level cavern where there's these beetles. I forget what they're called, like pop and blow or something like that. And
Yeah.
they
They fart and
blow.
they explode, right?
Yeah,
Or something.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Toot and blow or something like that. But I'm like, why does it always have to be farts and blowing raspberries or whatever? It's just because it's funny, it's humor, it's for kids. I get it. I actually thought, considering some of the trailers I've seen and considering some of the talk about the movie going into it, I felt like it was going to be a little bit more uh, targeted towards something a bit more YA or mature for teens than it actually is. And I just feel like they could have really gone there, but I think they were probably afraid to. And they wanted to just kind of make sure they were, you know, kind of targeting a wide range of kids in the audience. Although I do think that this is probably might be over the head for some younger kids.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. My question is like, even the target audience, if they're say, older young kids, preteens, or even teenagers, they've probably seen the movies, a lot of the films that this is
Yeah.
taken from, especially, Marvel and other Disney films. So
Hmm.
I just wonder how this is going to do. I didn't, it's no secret that I did not like the live action Mulan. Love the animated,
Hmm.
1998
Hmm.
version, but I'm thinking like this movie, I think it would have gone a lot in making me like it more if they had treated the characters and the delivery and the screenwriting like they had
The
either
live
the
action
live
one.
action or the
Yeah.
animated Mulan, because it was
Yeah.
serious, kind of drama. They took out the animated parts and the dragon
The
sidekick and
songs.
everything and the
Yeah.
songs.
Mhm.
But it's almost like they felt like, oh, this is an animation, so we've got to make it for quote unquote kids. I'm like, no, you could have had that the caliber of acting from either of those versions of it, transplanted it here, and I think it would have been much more successful.
I don't argue with that. I think that they were trying to really just go with a proven formula, and that they're probably just thinking that, hey, this is what's worked before. Let's do a variation on that. You know, creating our own world and our own original characters, yet making them somewhat familiar and similar. Like, if you like these movies, you'll like this. I guess it's not totally unheard of.
It's not unheard of, but it's so disappointing because
Mm,
I look at a movie like Onward, which was far more original than this,
true.
because we were introduced to it was a hero's journey, but the dynamics between the characters, the world they were inhabiting, the logic and the conventions of it were things that you can't point to in other points of reference, at least
Yeah,
not easily.
it
um
was a lot more outrageous and specific, so I did appreciate that a lot more. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm thinking, like, if you're gonna have a big budget Disney fantasy movie, then go out there. Like, don't show me the 90th ripoff of the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark as the opening of this movie.
Hmm.
Down to, well, I guess that was Last Crusade, where she's touching the floor panel and then the thing shoots
Or
out.
yeah, I mean, even when she grabbed the first crystal, I mean, it pretty much is like the idol in Peru, the opening of Raiders. And I thought of Return of the Jedi when they all got caught up in that trap, and they're hanging out in the trap. I thought of the Ewoks trapping our heroes.
I
Again,
thought
I
of
thought about these things, and I just went with it.
Yeah, there was two other just minor complaints that I have, that just really got in my craw, and I want to see how you feel about them.
Hmm.
The first, and this is something that my wife pointed out while we were watching it, as they're going around collecting these gems, they're on this shrimping boat that's getting them from island to island or whatever.
Thanks
Uh,
to Sisu, yeah.
right. They Raya has all of the gems that she's collecting in a pouch that she carries with her into all of these perilous situations. Why didn't she leave those items on the boat where they would be safe? I know the answer. It's because then you wouldn't have a story. But I'm thinking realistically, you're going through great pains to collect these very rare things that people are out to get, and yet you're carrying them all around with you at the same time.
It's a lack of trust. She doesn't trust anybody else with them, so she keeps them on her.
Again,
Yeah.
that's I mean, I understand that, but it's a reach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, okay,
And the other thing?
let's not say it's a reach, but it just also shows this kind of an attitude. I understand not trusting people, but to take the idea of mistrust to the nth degree that this movie takes it, I'm like, it becomes cartoonish. Like, I literally can't trust anybody, and neither can anybody around me. The world is not that, one dimensional, or, pardon me,
Well,
cartoonish.
yeah, and she's learning that as she goes along, is that like there are people you can trust. Like when they first meet the boy on the boat, he's offering them food, and she's says to Sisu, "Don't eat this; it could be poisonous."
Yeah, and
And
that
she's
was a
like,
nice
"Why?" Yeah,
that
yeah,
was a nice moment, and it's a good counter to Zisu's counter to that, and helping to open her up. But
yeah.
to what you were saying about the lack of trust, by the time they get to that fifth or fourth or fifth realm, she's still carrying around the things in the pouches, which could be a lack of trust. But by that point, we should have seen some more cracks in that, I guess. The other
Yeah.
thing that I had a problem with was at the end, when they go to the realm with her main nemesis,
Hmm.
and something tragic happens. We won't spoil it, but there's a moment that mirrors something that happens in Star Wars: A New Hope, is all I'll say. um, Everything's kind of going to
Yeah.
hell. The dark forces become very powerful and start sucking up all of the water in the land because they're allergic to water. But once and a certain impediment is taken away from them, they all of the water is absorbed and they can start rampaging throughout the land and turning people
Mhm.
into stone. While all this is going on, the 5 or 4, I guess, members of this ragtag group of heroes is trying to ward off the darkness and save people. And yet
Mhm.
Raya, our alleged hero, decides to go on this vengeance trip and march into the palace, and all she can think about is killing her enemy.
Yeah, the
Now,
Mari.
it reminds me of the problem that people had with Man of Steel and that extended climax with Zod. It's like, no, the entire city is being destroyed around you. There are probably millions of people being injured or killed right now, and you're on this weird vengeance trip. Go help those people.
Yeah, it's part Age of Ultron where the team is trying to get people out of Sokovia, and it's part Man of Steel. Um, yeah, I get it.
And also, there was this really weird throwaway line because there was a big point of all of the water. They go through this giant
Mhm.
montage of the water being absorbed and kind of evaporating everywhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
But as the team is running up to this palace and there's people running out of the palace, someone says, "Get to the water." I'm like, there is what water? We
I
just
did
established.
notice that. I was like, wait, what? Even if they would have said, "Get to what's left of the water," get to
Well,
the disappearing water.
or get to
Uh,
the water. It's gone.
yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
a.
It would have been interesting if somebody had like I don't know, water powers like Iceman, where you could just like freeze the water and it's like, hey, see, no problem, we got water. Yeah, just freeze it from evaporating. Yeah, I get that. There is even like when Raya first finds Sisu, she's using that map that you mentioned, and she's basically going to all the little uh, uh, branches of this one river, and she's gone to all these other branches. There's this one area that she's still uh, has to visit, and it's in this barren landscape and this crack in the surface chasm that like barely a creek that is winds up at a shipwreck, a ship that's wrecked, a carcass of a ship. Um, and because the idea is that if there is a last dragon out there, it is where the water is at, where the river runs. And I just felt like, okay, um, this is barely a river here, and this is barely, and I get it, but it just seems like, wait a minute here. Yeah, so that was a bit of a head scratcher for me. But again, it's something I just got on board with. Let me ask you this though: with the introduction of Sisu, I was initially disappointed that it was a talking dragon. What did you think about that? Like, what would you think if this movie didn't have? Not, I don't care about Aquafina. Aquafina, I think she's fine. She's talented. I like her. But what if maybe she didn't talk in dragon form, only in when she turned into human? I don't know.
No, that's an excellent question. I think that might have solved the story.
Hmm.
Because, well, first of all, you'd have to get rid of the ninja toddler, because it's a rule of these movies. You can only have one member of the
The
ragtag bunch
can't talk.
has to not talk, or can only
R
talk in
two
like
D two.
Groot. This is definitely the Groot character. Um,
Technically, he talks, but only 3 words. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so, and this little baby kind of like does little cooing baby on.
She does say Sisu at the end, so
Oh,
there's
does she?
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is actually Chinese for "I am Groot." True fact.
Oh, there you go.
But no, Chinese. That's probably terribly racist. I'm sorry. But
Southeast Asian. Okay.
Mandarin, I don't know. But I think by not having her talk, I think that would have. First of all, I feel like the tone of this movie, down to those dialogue considerations, may have led off from the fact that they got Aquafina, who has this very kind of comedic
Raspy.
millennial
Yeah.
style to her, right? Very, very comic, very now is an old
Hmm.
person might say. So I wonder if they didn't have that, would the rest of the script been more and the dialogue been more adult? Because if you don't have this comic, like this extra comic character, and she's definitely the
Hmm.
most boisterous and weird kind of fish out of water character, I think it
Dragon
would
out of
have,
water.
yeah, I think it would have caused a ripple effect of maturity throughout the rest of the screenplay, and I think it would have been a lot stronger.
Yeah.
That's
It,
actually the movie, the version of this movie I want to see is where the dragon does not talk and has to go through
yeah.
all these different emotions. You can even have her transform into a human being who doesn't talk and have to have Raya speak for her and that kind of stuff. And that
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it would actually force Raya to actually be a little bit more others focused, because then if you have this dragon that's pretty much pantomiming or speaking in body language, she's forced to really be observant and really try and communicate somehow with a one-way communication. That would have been interesting. Again, it we wouldn't have as big of a punched up personality for that character. I think it would be interesting for the times that she does turn into this kind of wild looking human with this big lavender hair. That's when she speaks as Aquafina. That would be interesting. I just think it would ask more out of the main character and maybe kind of force her to grow, because she would be thinking less about her own situation and more about how to deal with communicating with this last dragon. Um, yeah.
Well, to that point, we've been talking about the issue of trust. That is something that mankind in this universe is dealing with, a lack of
Hmm.
trust. If you've got this dragon that's very important but can't communicate in the human language,
Hmm.
you have, and if you want to bring her along, you need her to come along on this journey to retrieve this stuff. You have to develop a rapport, a trust, and that might
Yeah.
have opened up Raya to being more empathetic, not only towards this dragon because she has to establish trust and is two-way street, but also
Hmm.
to see the people around her in a different light, in a more
Yeah.
obvious or a more believable way, I think, than what's portrayed here.
Yeah. I mean, dealing with barriers that could be relatable to the type of barriers that viewers might experience. So that would have been interesting. I hate to sit there and talk about movies of what would have happened if this would have happened. It's like okay, but I couldn't help think about. I saw myself. I was a little surprised by how I was initially dismayed that the dragon could talk, and I'm like, oh, okay, but that's what Disney's going to do. This is another box that we're checking off, that it's going to be this, you know, fun, outgoing, quirky, engaging character that is thrust upon us. Okay, so I just went with it. But I think the most um, going back to what I originally said about the conversations that Raya had with Sisu, the most interesting and I think you know I don't know, absorbing moments for me were those conversations that they had, I think, on the boat, where they were both human and they're both trying to understand humanity and behavior. And I think for me, in a movie that's all about kind of like, pretty much focuses on action and magic and fairy tales and myths and all this, for that to be the moment that, really struck me the most was kind of surprising. But I don't know, that just kind of sticks out for me, just to have these two characters figuring the world out and figuring each other out and themselves out was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate those for what they were in the context of the movie that they're in, but I feel like we needed another character that represented the point of view of Raya's dad somewhere along the rest of this movie,
Hmm.
because everybody is at war with each other, or they're a traitor, or they're an enemy, or they're down on humanity. They've lost all hope. Her dad, and I understand why she was disillusioned after everything that had happened,
Sure.
but again, it's just hard for me anyway to watch a movie where the attitude is everything sucks and I don't care, without me simultaneously thinking, well, this sucks and I don't care, but I got to get to the end. And the only useful part about this video game setup, where it's like you have down to the giant level title card of Fang Spine, popping up in big letters on the screen, is that serves as a countdown for me. Like, okay, this is level 3 of 5. We're getting close to the end credit scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. I still don't. I'm still not totally on board with the fact that she's an everything sucks I don't care character. She may be everything sucks, but I think she cares about something, because she is still trying to go on this mission all on her own initially, of finding this last dragon and possibly, I mean, it's all initially to hopefully reunite with her dad and follow through. But I think, eventually she realizes that she can hopefully follow through with the dream that he had of all these nations coming together. I don't think she was on board with that initially. It was just, she was left to survive on her own with her roly-poly friend and to try and find this last dragon. But I don't think she ever believed that she could unite everybody and form this commandra that her father envisioned. It took all these other let's say levels and unexpected companions to get her there. And even then she is making mistakes, and even towards the end in that climax, like you said, she's seeking vengeance. And again, it reminded me, this especially that third act, it reminded me that another lesson they're teaching here is that we need each other. We need connection. We need to we need empathy, and we need to come together, and just doing things on our own and going about things solo isn't really necessary. There are people out there who will help you, and sometimes it comes from unexpected help. And I think these are the messages that are in the movie that I think at least it makes for me a successful viewing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that those messages are in there in places, but I don't think they're in the right places. What we're talking about with that whole vengeance scene towards the end, I think if it had been, I keep forgetting her name, the enemy princess.
I think it's Namari.
Namari. If she had been the one stalking after Raya, who was in the process of trying to help everybody, and then she had to be staved off, like, this isn't a time for our petty squabbles, we need to team up and save people, but she's the one who's being the aggressor. She's storming into the palace. Namar, we've just seen her mother has been turned to stone, so she's doubly pissed off about everything. I just feel like that is a mid-film kind of behavior, whereas I don't feel like she has learned all these lessons that you're saying that she should have been learning along the way. They're just peppered in different parts, but they're not in a line that is they're not in a sequential line. They're just kind of all over the place. And as far as her initial as far as her initial mission, she's trying to find her dad, or get this dragon to help find her dad, but it's the way that she talks about people and the world throughout the film that is, I mean, I understand where that comes from. It's just hard to hear. I don't like being around people who are like, yeah, this sucks, it's never going to get any better, and people are kind of rotten, you can't trust anybody. I'm like, well, just go over there and don't share this with me, especially not for an hour and 40 minutes.
Well, one of my favorite Disney characters is Eeyore, so what am I gonna, I don't mind that at all.
Right, but it's Winnie the Pooh, and Eeyore is like the third cast member down. It's not the Eeyore show, like, don't bother watching this show. This book's probably going to disappoint you. No.
Eeyore's solo adventure, brought to you by Xanax. Yeah.
I would watch that.
You want it. Yeah.
I want it more than anything.
Leave me alone, Piglet. Yeah. Hey, Yeah, have him voiced by the dearly departed Bud Lucky. But yeah, good stuff.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I did like that quick moment that kind of pulled Raya out of that vengeance feud. It almost reminded me of like uh, Kylo Ren Rey type of feud type thing. But at one point, she is able to notice, kind of an aside vision here, what else is happening with the rest of her party. Like her teammates are trying to save people, and it almost pulls her out of like this, fog of vengeance. And I appreciated that, because sometimes, again, it's what's being mindful of what's happening around you instead of being fueled by this single emotion. And she is, again, it takes this community, this ragtag team, to snap her out of her own self and help her see the big picture and realize that you can still do something for the big picture and the world, if you just look beyond yourself and your own emotions.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's there.
yeah.
All right. So this is on Disney Plus Premiere, which means you gotta pay for it. How much is it? Is it 20 or 30 bucks? I don't remember.
If it's following the Mulan formula from last fall, it's probably going to be $29.99. I'm not sure. I don't see it.
You said you said that because we are both critics, we had the privilege of watching this film for free. When we talked about Mulan a few months ago, you said that you would plunk down the money for Mulan. Would you pay $30 Disney Premiere access for Raya and the Last Dragon, or wait for it to show up on Disney Plus?
Okay, to follow up on that, I never did plunk down the money.
Well, I'm not saying you did.
I'm just saying.
Question. Right. Okay.
If you're paying attention, if you want to keep track, I said that I would. I never did. Honestly, I only would have if my wife and daughter were interested. And when I told them we could pay for it now, and it's eventually at that point in December, it's going to show up on Disney Plus. And my wife's like, well, why are we going to pay for it then? So we still haven't seen it together. But as far as, I will say, watching Raya, which is in theaters and on Disney Plus,
which means it's on Disney Plus.
I know, but you and I know at least one person who's seen it in the theater, and I have to say, watching this, I'm like, man, it would be cool to just sit there and take it all in a big theater like the old days. If you're cool with going to the theater, and this tickles your fancy and you're drawn to it, go to the theater. I'm not going to say, again, if you're cool with it, but again, it's also going to be on your couch too. So I don't know if, look, you're going to pay less if you go to the theater.
Well, you might pay more in the long term if you.
Yeah, it's true. Put on your hazmat suit, go to the theater. Yeah, I mean, you and I have gone to the theater once during the pandemic, and it was together. And even then, it was a little uncomfortable, not to mention a confusing movie. But yeah, I mean, I would still like to experience something like this in a theater, just not right now. Yeah. I guess going back to the Premiere access, I don't think I'd pay $30. I just have a hard time because look, if I had a family, if I had like 4 kids, then probably,
yeah, because
that's still $30. $30 is cheaper than taking my 6 people out to the movie, or 5 people out to movie, so, and it's
now, refresh me, because I should remember this detail, but I don't. Is it a $30 like 48-hour rental, or is this you own it? I can't. Oh, I think it's you own it. It's on your Disney Plus account as long as you have a Disney Plus account. I thought that was how it worked.
I think that's what it is, and I think I don't think you own it, or let's just say it's there for you. Yeah. I don't know if you own it. It's there for you until it's available for everybody, probably 3 months later or something, or
right,
2 months later. Because didn't Mulan? Right. Because didn't Mulan, wasn't it released in October or was it September?
I
I think it
don't
was
know.
October.
It was 6
But
years ago,
then it
so I don't remember.
became available. That's right. That's right. But then it became available to like new Disney Plus content in like I think December 3rd or something like that. So if this follows that formula, then in like let's say 2.5, 3 months, this is just going to be new to Disney Plus for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't. I'm wondering though. I guess the big question is, was the $30 Mulan thing successful for Disney Plus? Are they going to be looking at this again to see if it's as successful or more successful than what the Mulan formula did? And then let's say they like what happens with Raya in this Premier Access thing. Would they follow suit with Black Widow? I doubt it.
Well, I mean, it's a weird thing because I'm not going to say they dumped it, but with Soul, which came out a couple months ago, they just put
Yeah,
that up on Disney Plus.
yeah, yeah. I wonder
And
what the determining factor there was.
I have this weird feeling that, Mulan and also Raya the Last Dragon and the Last Dragon, you know, they are specifically tailoring to an international global box office. They want to get that,
Mm,
they want to get the China money.
the extra,
So,
yeah.
right. So they probably dumped, I know they spent a huge amount of money on Mulan. So they're probably like, we have to do everything we possibly can. Even if it's not going to work, we have to tell the shareholders that, hey, we're charging $30 for it. What more do you want?
Right, right.
Which for Soul, I mean, I can imagine that being less expensive than a live action Mulan movie. And I don't know
Yeah,
how it matches up with Raya, but I can see like this is premium because they have some big bills to pay, which I don't
probably.
honestly, even with that, I don't know if they're going to make it up on this because I don't see this being, despite the 97% or whatever tomato meter rating, I feel like this is a movie that critics are going to love. Audiences might just be like, it's all right. I'm not going to, watch it again. Or like with you, I can wait 3 months to watch this. Honestly,
Yeah.
this feels more like a summer movie than something that should be out in March.
Yeah, and at this point, I feel like even before COVID, it's like animated movies being released. It's almost like throughout the year now. It used to be either Thanksgiving, Christmas, or June and July. And now it just feels like even with the original release date for Onward was March. It just feels like throughout the year there's so many studios and there's so many movies per studio, animated movies per studio, that it's nowadays it doesn't follow that formula. And again, I don't know. I don't know if it feels like a total summer movie to me, almost like a, I don't know, almost like a fall release. Maybe it's because of all the different worlds and stuff. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I did not feel like when the movie ended that, this deserves a sequel. And I don't even know. Yeah, I just felt like it is called Raya and the Last Dragon, so it's like, but then again, there's all these dragons and they could, at the end of the movie, and they could have little dragons, and How to Train Your Dragon could have ended easily after that, but whatever.
Well, the next one, this was the Raya and the Last Dragon. Next should be Raya and the Rise of the Last Dragon.
Or the
Sorry.
second to the last dragon, or the.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's the last of it, I think, for us. Did you watch the short that was attached to this?
There was.
Yeah, it was
Oh, was it
not Among Us. That's
was it made available to us?
yeah.
I didn't watch that. Did you?
Yeah, I watched it. I don't remember the title. It's old people dancing and remembering when they were young and dancing.
Awesome.
I made the mistake of watching it, and my wife can attest to this, right after watching Riot and the Last Dragon, when I was just so over everything that this magical, heartwarming musical little ditty just did nothing for me.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that now.
Yeah. So,
although you're not plugging it very well, so.
well, yeah, but then again, I'm the guy who doesn't like Ryan the Last Dragon. That should tell you everything you need to know. Anyway, David Fowley, thank you again very much for joining me to talk about this film.
Yep.
I'm Even though we are coming at it from different points of appreciation, I definitely appreciate this conversation. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
it's always good to talk.
yeah, and I'll be talking to you tonight when this thing goes up, because we're going to be discussing WandaVision episode 9.
The end of it all, or
Yes.
the beginning.
So if you're watching this on Friday, March 5th, join us at 8:30 p.m. Central right here on YouTube. We'll be talking live the season 1 finale of the WandaVision recap. Exciting
Yep.
stuff. Yeah, no dragons in
stuff.
that one, but
We'll see. We don't know.
yeah, and no dead parents yet. Anyway,
They're already dead.
oh well, one, yeah, but
Yeah.
he's still alive for now. For now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think, or maybe there's 2 of them. My 2 dads. Ooh, all right.
I'm just
Take it
thinking
easy,
of
sir.
Wanda's parents.
Hmm?
I'm just thinking of Wanda's parents. They're already dead.
Oh yeah, we did have some. Forget everything. I'm gonna have to go edit that part out because I'm totally a fool now. But yeah. Anyway, take it easy, sir. We'll be talking movies and TV shows at some point very soon.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Bye. Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.